Hi, welcome to the Elf for Your Shelf tutorial, workshop tutorial. You should start with the bag of contents, and you're going to open it up and empty everything out. Once you do, you will find a pen, you'll find 2 bobbins of yarn, 4 pieces of felt, 2 wooden beads, a glue tube, a baggie with a toothpick, 4 chenille sticks, the pattern template, the guide, the face guide, and instructions. First, you're going to start by cutting out all of the pattern pieces. Okay, once you have all of your pieces cut out, you're going to choose what color of felt you're going to start with. And there's several colors, and you can just decide which ones you want to start with. I'm going to start with red. And you want to fold over the felt that you're going to cut the mittens, outfits, and boots from. And you'll see this little drawing here, this indicator. That's what you're going to put on the fold line. So I'm going to place my first piece as close to the edge of the folded felt as possible because I want to economize on my felt. I don't want to just put it in the middle because I want to make sure that I have enough felt for all my pieces. So you're going to place the body or the outfit on the very end. And if you don't have pins, you can pin it. But if you don't have pins, you can just tape the pattern to the felt, and it works really well. So you're going to do that. You're going to do the same thing with the boot and the mitten. Those are going to go on the fold, be cut on the fold line. And I'll show you. You'll see the little square drawing there. That just indicates it's going on the fold. Okay, so once you have those on the fold line, you're going to cut them out. And I will walk through the cutting out as well. Also, one other thing, if you don't want to have your elf have this jagged edge on their outfit, you can just cut a straight line. That's just for effect. If you like it that way, you don't have to cut a jagged edge like that. It's important to have sharp scissors when you're cutting out fabric for the best success. And then you can peel away the pattern and you see that you have your outfit cut. And you can set that aside. The guide is going to come in handy when you are starting to make the elf. So since we're walking through the making of it, I'm going to go ahead and put my guide here. And where it says outfit, I'm just going to place the outfit so that it all stays organized. Now I'm going to cut out the boots and the mittens. And you're going to need to do this twice for the mitten and the boot because you need 2 of those. All right, once you have these cut out, you're going to remove the pattern, place it back on the fold, put the boot on your guide that's been cut out on the guide and the mitten that's been cut out on the guide, and then you will just do that again. You'll tape the pattern to the felt and cut another boot and mitten out. Okay, now you have both cut out. There they go, right there. Okay, so now you're ready to cut the hat out. You're just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna set the pieces I've already cut to the side, and then going to now cut the hat out. You only need one hat, so you can now place the felt out flat, find a good spot to cut out your hat. I like to really economize my felt and find a good place to place it so that I'm not wasting felt. Okay, so now I have that, I'm going to cut it out. All right, and I'm going to place the hat on the guide. Now you're ready to cut out the trim and the collar. And these items you only need one of as well, so you don't need to fold the fabric that you're going to use for your trim. And these are very small pieces, so you're just going to place them as best you can on the felt. And actually what you can do is just cut a strip of, you don't even really need the guides there, the patterns, you can use them, but you can also just cut a strip that's very similar in size to the bands. I'm just gonna place this on the felt here, and then kind of get an idea of how thick I need to cut them. I kind of eyeball it, and away I go. I just cut another strip, just like that. Okay, for the belt, you can do the same thing. You're just going to place it on the side for the belt. Because I want to make sure that it's exactly right, I'm gonna probably go ahead and just tape it to my felt so that I can cut it out exactly. I don't really need a longer strip of that, so I'm gonna go ahead and just tape that pattern and cut. Okay, so I have some, strips for my mitten band, I have some strips for my boot band, I have the belt cut. I'm gonna go ahead and put these on my guide here so it's easy to keep track of everything. Got some trim pieces here, okay. This is for the hat band. Go ahead and probably eyeball that as well. Oops, no, I'm gonna need to tape that. It's about the same length as the belt, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut a strip along where I cut the belt. And there I have my hat band. I'm gonna go ahead and put it there with trim. Set those aside. Okay, now you're ready for your collar. Again, you're just going to find a close to the edge place to put the pattern, like that, and tape it down, and then cut it out. Again, you don't have to use this jagged pattern if you don't want it to be, to have it this type of collar. You can just cut a circle if you think your elf would look cute with a circle. It's really up to you. You're making this elf, it's your elf, so you can embellish and change it to your liking. Okay, here I have the collar. I'm gonna go ahead and put the collar there. Now with the belt buckle, this is a very tiny piece, and you only need one per elf. You do have enough felt in your kit to make 2 elves. And so again, you're just gonna hold it to the edge of your felt. You don't wanna place it in the center because then, it makes it harder to cut out. and it also sort of wastes the felt. So you're just gonna, I'm gonna hold it there in place. I don't feel like I need to tape it. I'm just gonna hold it there with one hand and then cut it out like that. To get these center cut out, what you do is you just fold the belt buckle that you've just, that square that you've just cut out for the belt buckle, and you're going to just cut just a tiny bit into the fabric. So when you open it up, you'll see two cut pieces, and then you'll just put your scissors in there and cut out the center. And from there you'll see you have a small hole there, and you can use your scissors to cut around to make a better square, better looking square. But it is fine work. It is challenging. So just know that you're gonna need to take your time and maybe attempt a couple of tries at it rather than think you're gonna just get it in one try, because sometimes you just need to go at it again. So look, I made my hole a little bit bigger just by shoring up the square in the middle. All right, so now I have my belt all done. I'm gonna put it right there, my buckle done, excuse me. And all of my pieces are now cut out. We are ready to assemble the elf. If you decide that you are going to go ahead and make your elf now, you don't need to put your pieces in this baggie. But if you're gonna follow along during the class, then you can put all of your felt pieces that you've just cut out into this baggie and keep them safe until the workshop. But if you're going to go ahead and assemble the elf now, then you don't really need this baggie. But the baggie does have the toothpick inside, which you will need later for poking a hole in the outfit and also the collar, which I forgot to mention in the directions. So just be aware of that. You will need to poke a hole in the collar as well. All right, we are ready to make the elf body. This is a little bit tricky, so if you need to stop and rewind and watch it again, I think that would be really helpful. So you're gonna start with your chenille sticks. They're going to be placed in an X form, like this. And you're going to take the two that are behind the top one, and you're just going to wrap the one side over. And you're going to twist the top one and the bottom one together. This forms the body. So you're just going to go down a little bit, maybe roughly an inch or so. Then you're going to flip it around and do the same thing to the other side. Just like that. Okay? So you're just twisting the two chenille sticks together to form one main center. This is the body. These are going to be your legs. These are going to be your arms. Okay? I like to make sure that the body has some good length to it. So if you need to measure it, you can measure it out. I'm looking at this, it's probably like 1.5 inches or 2 inches. But you just want to have a good portion for the body. Okay, now that you have this done, you're going to bend the top two, or these are going to be your arms. Just going to bend it maybe 1/2 inch, maybe 1/4 inch. Looks like 1/2 inch to me. Down. This is going to be your neck. So you're just going to pinch that together, and you're going to then use your finger to create this shape. So you'll have a little bit of your arm length of the chenille stick bent downward, same side bent down a little bit, so that you have this little portion sticking up. That's going to be the neck. Well, you will place the outfit over, the collar on, and the wooden bead for the head on top. Okay, now we are ready to wrap our chenille sticks with the yarn. Now the reason I like to do this is because it gives your elf a lot more structure and stability. If you were to skip the wrapping part, it is tricky. It is a hard part of the making of the elf. But if you were to skip it, your elf would be just fine. He or she would still be super cute. It would be not as thick or what's the word I'm looking for? It wouldn't look as finished, but it would still look very, very cute. So if you want to skip the yarn process altogether, just fast forward until we get to the part where we're going to dress our elf. But for now, we are going to, I'm going to walk you through the part where you're covering the chenille stick with the yarn. So you're just going to measure out probably, 36 inches or so. You don't want too much that's going to be unwieldy to work with, but you also don't want it too short because you're going to need to cut another piece then to wrap the chenille. So I like to start with about 3 feet, 36 inches to begin with. You're going to start with one end of the arm, one end of this elf body. You're going to place the end of the yarn next to the chenille stick, and then you're going to use your thumb and wrap the yarn around your thumb, and then slip it over the chenille stick, just like that. And you're just going to continue this action until you get to the end where the neck part is. And you're just going to wrap it, slide it over, and pull like that. So you're going to loop it over your thumb. You're going to put the chenille stick through the loop and then just tighten it and continue down until you get to the neck. You're also covering that bit of yarn as you cover the chenille stick. You can have a little bit of the chenille stick sticking out at the end because that is where the mitten is going to be glued to. Now you'll notice there is some of the red sticking out of the yarn. And what you can do to cover that up is you just push down the loops. You just scooch them closer together. You don't want to push them too hard because then you will push your loops off the chenille stick. You can also just loop that over, bend the end of your chenille stick over so that doesn't happen to you. And it does make it less pokey when you're putting your thumb over the chenille stick too. So that's a pro tip for you. You can choose to pull your loops as tight as you want. You can keep them kind of loose, or you can really cinch them up tight. It's really up to you. I like to keep them a little bit loose because then I can move the loops down easier, down the chenille stick a little easier. Once you've reached the end of the first arm, you're going to loop one loop over the neck just to keep all of those parts together. You're just going to loop one loop, but you're not going to cover the neck part. And then you're going to turn the elf body around and begin the loop process again, only this time you're going to work towards the end, closest to the body, looping the yarn around the chenille stick towards the end of the arm. So just going in the opposite direction, and you're just going to continue that process. If you run out of yarn if you run out halfway, you shouldn't. If you've had 36 inches, you should be just fine. You should have plenty of yarn to work towards the end of the other arm. But if not, you'll just cut another piece and continue as you started on this end. So you'll notice that I am beginning to run out of yarn towards the end of my chenille stick. And this is not the biggest problem in the world because most of your elf body is going to be covered by the outfit, and the end of the chenille stick is going to be covered by the mitten. So it's not the end of the world if you are getting really close to the end, but you're running out of yarn. What you can do is you can make a very small loop just by crossing over the pieces or crossing over the yarn and sliding it over the end of the chenille stick that way and pulling tight. If you can no longer wrap it around your thumb or loop it around your thumb to wrap the chenille stick. The other thing that you can do is you can just scooch this part that's not going to show. You can scooch that down towards the end of your arm. Again, you're going to want to loop over the end so you don't push all your loops off your arm. All that work you've done, you don't want to push them off. But you can just slide them down slow to the end like that, so that your arm is, the arm part that's showing is covered in yarn. So it's not the best, it's not the most ideal, but if you run into that problem, that's a solution. You can also when you're that close to the end and you're running out of yarn, it doesn't seem like you should cut another piece of yarn to create more loops. It seems like you should just push them down towards the end. But if you want to unloop everything and start with another piece of yarn and then continue wrapping in that way, you can do that. Okay, we are done with the arms and now we're ready for the body. Basically, you're just going to do the same thing that you did with the arms as you with the body. It's a little trickier because you have to go over the legs in order to wrap the body, but it's just a small amount, so you're just going to be uncomfortable for a little bit. When you're cutting another piece of yarn, you're going to again, measure it out about 36 inches. You might need a little bit more to start with. When we were talking about measuring for the arms, I think I said 36 inches, but you might consider just like holding your arms out all the way and then using that as your guide. So it might be longer than 3 feet. It might be more like 4 feet or 5 feet. I'm just gonna start in the same manner. You're going to put the yarn over the top of the body. Now remember, this part of the of the elf isn't going to show. It's going to be covered with the outfit. So you don't have to use your loops to cover the end of the yarn, but you are going to make a loop. You're going to stick the legs through the loop, cinch the loop tighter, and then move it down towards the base of the body. Okay, so make one big loop and put both legs through, pull it tight, push it down towards the neck. You don't want to cinch it up too tight. You don't want to cinch it so you can't move it closer to the end of the neck, but you do want to cinch it up tight once it gets to the place that you want it. And you just keep going. If you accidentally cinch it really tight and you have this big loop, there is an easy way to fix that. You just slide your loop down to where you need it and then cinch it up again. You might need to use both hands to wiggle the loop so it looks secure and tight, but it's really an easy fix. So just continue looping the body. As you're wrapping the body, you can place the part that you've already wrapped, the arms, on the table. Hold it with the palm of your other hand, or just secure it with your other hand that you're not using to wrap, and loop with the opposite hand, the thumb of the opposite hand, and loop it around. It makes it a little easier when you're wrapping the body to have it stabilized by the other hand against the table. And as you can see, I'm just looping, pushing the loop down, and then I'm tightening it. I'm looping it around the legs, pulling a little bit, moving the loop down, and then pulling it tight. Making the big loop. I'm almost there, the end of the body. Okay, so once you have the body completely wrapped, oh, your elf is really coming together, then you're just going to wrap one leg at a time. So you have come to the two legs. You're going to loop around one side of the body loop one, starting with one of the legs, and you're just going to continue down and cover the chenille stick with the yarn as you did with the arms, and just continue down until you get to the very end. And then you probably will run out of yarn getting to the end of this one leg. So you'll cut another piece of yarn and loop the yarn around the next leg, and do that until both legs are covered. As you can see, I'm just working my way down the leg, looping the yarn, pulling it tight, and looping, pulling it. As you notice, if you pull it tight and you've got the big loop there, you just push it down and pull it tight. So this is a really neat way to make sure that your loops are nice and close together and secured to the chenille stick. By the time you've gotten to the legs too, you've had a lot of practice with the arms and the body, and so it becomes a little bit easier to loop the yarn around the chenille stick and tighten it. If you go past, let's say you loop it around your chenille stick and you're pushing it down and you go past into the part you've already covered, not a big deal. You just loosen up the loop and you push it back to where you want it, and then pull it tight, just like that. Okay, we're just gonna continue on. Okay, so as you can see, I came to the end of one leg and I don't have enough yarn. I just had just enough yarn. So I'm going to cut another piece of yarn. You know, just stretch out your arms and then cut a piece and start over with the final leg. Okay. I wanted to cover something that might happen during the making of your elf when you're wrapping the yarn around the chenille sticks, is you might have a situation where you're just not happy with how things have been wrapped. And I'm looking at this side of my elf arm and I'm really not happy with it. This is also something that you can easily fix. So it is a little bit time consuming, but what you're gonna do is you're just going to find the loop that's close to the body, and you're going to begin unlooping them. Like I said, it is time consuming, but if you just want your elf to be its best elf it can possibly be, then you know, you can just undo what you've already done. It's not gonna be the worst thing in the world. Just undo it and continue until you get to the part where you know you want to make it look better. So I'm going to stop the video and undo this, and then what I'm probably gonna do is cut a completely new piece of yarn, because I know I'm not gonna have enough to go all the way to the end of this arm. And so I'll just cut a new piece of yarn and then wrap it, and I'll be right back. Okay, my entire elf body is now wrapped and ready to be dressed. Once you get to the end of your final arm or legs, you just need to cut the yarn. So it doesn't matter if a little bit is sticking out, because that's going to be covered with the boots and the mittens. So you'll see these strings hanging out and this hanging out. It's not a big deal because your elf outfit will be covering that. You can snip these little bits off a little bit just to, you know, to make it look a little tidier. But once you've gotten to this point here, you're ready to dress your elf. All right, so now you're going to get the toothpick that's been in this baggie. You're gonna get that toothpick out. You're going to fold the elf outfit over, and then you're going to fold it arm to arm like that. You're just gonna get a sense of where the center is, and you're just going to poke your toothpick in there just to make a mark. And I can see my mark here, and I'm just gonna poke the toothpick all the way through, just like that. And you can, once you poke the toothpick through, you just kind of wiggle it a little bit, because you do want that to be an opening. That's where you're going to be slipping over the neck of your elf. You're gonna be slipping that through just like this. Okay, ta-da. Okay, now you're gonna do the same thing with your collar. Just gonna fold it in half, fold it in quarters, poke a little mark there. You can also use a pen if you really wanna make sure it's center, but I just poke the toothpick in and create like a little indentation, and then I poke the toothpick through to make the hole, and then I can slip the collar over that, just like this. That just shows the importance of wiggling the toothpick around to make that hole. You can just kind of hold onto the collar and stretch the hole a little bit. That. Okay. And again, poke it through. Okay, so you're set. The collar and the body is on. The other thing is you don't really need to put this collar on just yet because your head's gonna be last. But it is kind of nice just to, since you're poking a hole in the outfit, nice just to poke a hole in the collar to get it ready. Now I'm gonna take that collar off. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back on my guide. And now we're going to glue the outfit on. So what you're gonna do is you're going to make sure the arms are as close to the top of the outfit as possible. And you're going to take your glue tube. Here's your glue tube. This is tacky glue, and it is like hot glue. It's like cold hot glue or a safer super glue. You're just gonna get that squeezed to the end, and now you're going to pipe the glue just down one end of the arm and then down the end of the side of the outfit, and you're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're just going to pipe that glue up one side and across to the arm. That, put the cap back on, and then fold this over so that the arms, you make sure you're moving the arm that you've wrapped, that's the wire part, up so it doesn't get entrapped by the glue. And you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to fold it over, fold the outfit over, and make sure the glue is staying put, as being, you know, the outfit's being glued. Now you're going to hold this here for about a minute or more. It just depends. I mean, tacky glue does dry very quickly, but you really want to make sure that it has a good hold before you continue working on the rest of your elf. It's okay that this glue is seeping down and out a little bit. It will dry and you won't see it, so don't worry too much about that. But you do want to make sure it has that's good and secure before you continue on with dressing the rest of your elf. So I'm just going to poke that and hold that and just wait a minute. I'm making kind of a taller elf. You can see that his legs are pretty long. And you can shorten the arms and the legs of your elf. If you want your elf to be a little shorter, you can either cut the length of your chenille sticks to the length that you want your elf. So that's just another option. But I'm making an elf that has longer legs. I'm kind of tall, so I'm making my elf kind of tall. All right, so now we're ready to, I'm feeling like that's good and secure. If I see it coming away, I can just press it back in place and make sure that it's staying stuck. Okay, but now I'm going to, and it's not completely dry. That's the other thing I want to mention. It's not completely dry. It's just, it really is looking like it's sticking. The two felt pieces are sticking together to make that body. Okay, so now I get to glue on my boots. So I'm going to make sure that my boot foot is facing the way I want it to face before I actually glue it all down. And also, if you have any tape remnants from when you taped the pattern, you want to get those off. And so I'm just going to set my boots out so that I know that my boot feet are aiming in the right way. If you get your boots aiming in the wrong way, not the biggest deal in the world. You can just you can twist your elf leg to make it look like it's facing the right way. Okay, so for the boot, you're going to, again, you're going to place the glue as close to the edge as possible, blob it here in the center, blob it over here, so that you have kind of it looks like a little sock shape, really. And you're going to place the chenille stick end there. You're going to put the yarn wrapped in there so it doesn't show. You're going to fold over the boot, and you're just going to hold it for 1 minute, until that glue feels like it's really good and secure, okay? So I'm just gonna press my finger down and hold it there. Just like that. Now I know that it's looking like it's really staying stuck, so I know I can do the same thing on this side. I'm gonna add my glue, a good blob of it. So then I'm going to fold down the yarn, place the end of the chenille stick down. Just, you know, make sure that the yarn is tucked in there and it doesn't escape. You might need to add a little more yarn on the other side. You might need to add a little more glue on the other side of your chenille stick. So you can tuck your yarn in there, fold it over, okay, and hold it down. You also want to make sure that your leg is coming out the center of your boot. You don't want to make it look like your leg is coming out this side of the boot or in another awkward position. So you're just going to hold those down for about a minute and until they're good and secure. And then you just continue. I'm going to turn my elf over here this way. And now I'm going to do the mittens. And again, you want to make sure that the thumbs are facing the right way. Kind of hold your hands out and like, okay, my thumbs are aiming up. So my elf is, if I put my mittens like this, it looks like his hands are going the right direction. Mittens are going the right direction. I mean, you can do your elf hands or elf mittens however you want, but this is how I do it. Again, you're just going to squeeze a good blob in the center there. Nice little blob in the center. You're gonna place your elf hand. You might, you know, if it's pretty thick, if you see, my yarn comes all the way down to the end of my elf arm, which it would be better to have more chenille stick there, as I have on this side. But that's okay. I mean, it's all right. I'm just gonna put a little glue on that side of the mitten and fold it over so that it stays stuck, okay? And you're just you're gonna hold it for about a minute until that glue is feeling like it's good and stuck. And then continue on. And I'm just going to twist my elf this way so that I can access that side of his arm better, or her arm better. Okay, I like this side better because I do have more of a chenille stick than more of the, it's not as thick. Okay, so now you've got your yarn, the end of your elf arm in the mitten. I'm gonna put another little blob and sandwich it. Just like that. Now, if you have any of your yarn bits sticking out of your mitten, when it dries, it's no big deal. You can just cut the ends. It's not a problem. Okay, I'm gonna hold my mittens. This is a really good example of what could go, it's not wrong, but just what could happen when you're gluing and things aren't going exactly the way you hoped. So see how my glue doesn't look like it's it's absorbing into the felt too much? That's okay. What you'll do is you'll just hold the end of your elf arm inside the mitten. You'll just squeeze a little glue in there. Now, if you have hot glue at home and you want to hot glue all your elf pieces together, feel free to do that. But for younger kids, it's, you know, hot glue can be kind of, you can burn your fingers and it's not fun. So again, I just put a little more glue in there, and now I'm just gonna hold them. I'm merely gonna pinch them and wait for a minute until they dry. Okay, so you'll notice that I have these gaps in my boots. Like the glue just didn't really, I didn't have enough glue, or the glue I didn't hold it long enough, or I could have held it for longer than a minute. Again, this is not a big deal. It's easily remedied. All you do is just put a little glue in there and fold it over or close it up and hold it tight again until it dries. So I'm gonna do that now, show you how I do that. Just going to squeeze a little more glue in there, and then I will hold it closed again, and I will wait, you know, a minute or more while it dries, while it's sticking together. Okay, so now we are ready to put the trim on our mittens and our boots. So you'll take your two skinniest pieces here, and one is for the mittens and one is for the boots. So I have this thinner one here that I'm going to use for my mittens, and I have a thicker one here I'm going to use for my boots. So you're just going to pipe glue. You're just going to pipe glue around this top part. Like that. You're going to place the trim along where you put that glue. Flip over your elf and do the same thing. You're going to pipe a little bit of glue at the top of this boot. Wrap it around like that. Flip your elf back over, and then maybe add just a little more glue at the end here so that the pieces stick together. And then I'm just going to trim off that excess. I was sort of hoping that I would have enough to then wrap around the other side of my boot, but that did not happen. That's okay. I have plenty of the felt I used for the trim, and I'll just cut another little strip. And then pipe the glue. Pipe the glue around and trim it again. Okay. You just want to hold that for, press and hold for a minute or so so that it is secure. All right, you're now ready to do the same thing with your mittens. And I've noticed that if I just pull on my strip of felt just a little bit, I can make it thinner. So if you've cut a piece that's a little too thick for your band, you can stretch out the felt a little bit and make it a little bit thinner. Okay, so now you're going to wrap the mitten both sides, and I will pause the video now and we will finish that. I wanted to show you how I am gluing the mitten band, because I showed you how to do both the bands on the boots, and I wanted to show you how to do it on the mittens as well. So it basically is exactly how you did the boots. You're just going to pipe a little bit of glue at the base. You're going to press the trim on the mitten. You're going to flip over the elf, pipe a little more glue on the edge of the mitten, wrap the trim around, and you've got it. You're all set. Now, you're gonna wanna just kind of hold those into place and make sure the glue dries before you continue on. And so I'll pause the video and you will let those bits dry, and then we will continue on with the face and the hat. And then we're almost done. Okay, my mittens feel dry. I mean, I can feel that the glue is a little bit wet still, but everything is holding together. So I know I can continue on with dressing my elf. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna put the belt on. So it's just, again, you're gonna pipe the glue all along the belt. Then you're going to lift up your elf and place the belt in the center You're going to wrap the ends around like this and hold in place for a minute. And you can just kind of secure it there. It does feel like it's sticking quite nicely. And now I'm going to pipe just a little bit of glue on the center, or at the center, and place the belt buckle over the top there. You're going to get glue on your hands at this point because there's a hole in that buckle, but once the glue dries, you won't see that glue. So yeah, you're just going to press that buckle down and then let it dry. You're gonna just hold it there for a minute until it feels like it's sticking to the other parts of the felt. Now I can use the end of my glue and press that buckle down just a little bit if I want, or you can just use your fingers. Okay, so now I'm feeling really good about that belt being stuck there. We can wait a minute to make sure that that is good and stuck. The next step that you're going to do is you're going to just put a tiny bit of glue at the hole of your collar. You don't need a lot because the collar is going to be just resting at the top of your outfit. Doesn't need to be glued down onto the outfit. It's just going to rest there. Just a tiny bit of glue. You still want a little bit of your pipe cleaner sticking out. I'm worried that I don't have enough pipe cleaner sticking out, but it'll be fine because I'll have the glue, I'll pipe the glue into the wooden bead and then put the bead on my elf, just like that. So, but before we glue the head of the elf to the body, we're going to draw a face on it. So I'm going to set this part of my elf aside. My dressed elf is now over to the side, and it's time to draw a face on your elf. So you can leave your elf without a face. The Waldorf school, I think they have dolls that don't have faces, and you know, the elf is going to look very cute with a hat and no face. That's okay. But if you want to draw a face on your elf, you'll have this guide here. I borrowed this from Drawn to be Creative by Kristen Rabadine, and I just made it so that you can see how the eyes and mouth and nose can be made. What I recommend is drawing a few face examples before you draw it on your elf. And also, you're going to take a little bit of glue from your tube. You're going to pipe it. You're just going to put a blob where you're going to draw your face. And the reason you're going to do that is you're just going to smear a little bit of glue on your elf face, just like that. And the reason you're going to do that and let it dry before you draw on it, the reason you're going to do that is because this will keep the ink from bleeding on the wooden bead. The wooden bead has, you know, grooves and, you know, hidden grooves we can't see with our eyes, but the pen will seep into it. So you put a little bit of glue on the top of there, let it dry, and when you draw on that, it won't bleed into the wood of your bead. So I'm just going to set that aside right there and cap on. And now I'm just going to look at all of the different ways that I can make an elf face. And I like the classic, just two little dots and a happy mouth, and maybe I'll draw a small C for the nose. That's the kind of face that I like, but you decide. It's your elf, can look any way that you want. So I'm looking at my bead. I'm touching the glue. It still feels a little tacky, so I know it needs to dry a little bit longer before I draw the face. While this glue is drying on our wooden bead, we can make our elf hat. This is probably the hardest part of making this elf because the hat, You need to use both hands when you're making this hat, and you're going to need to hold it longer. You're gonna need to hold the glue longer because it needs to be extra dry before you place it on your elf head. So yeah. So what you're gonna do is you're going to get your glue out again, and you're going to pipe a bead of glue along one end of the hat. You're going to fold the hat towards that end, the opposite end of the hat towards that end, and then you're just going to fold it over like that. And you're just going to manipulate it in a way that it feels a little twist, like you're almost twisting that end, but really what you're trying to do is get the seam so that it's flat. So, and you're actually gonna wanna hold this for probably longer than a minute. I'm gonna stop the video because I know it's going to be longer than a minute, and you probably don't wanna wait and watch me hold this while it dries. Okay, so your hat is dry, the glue on the wooden bead is dry. You can see it because it's a little glossier. You can see where to draw because it is glossier on the bead. But now you're gonna decide if you want to have your elf, if you want your elf to have hair. So now is the time to decide that. And I think I'm gonna have my elf have a little bit of this, this hair that I covered the body in. I think it's really colorful and cute. But you did get other yarn with your kit. So if you want to use the other yarn that I got purple yarn with mine. I could use purple yarn for the hair, or I could decide that I don't want my elf to have hair at all. The other thing that you can do is you can just have your elf have bangs. And so if you just want a little bit of hair sticking out, you can cut just a few strands, and then that can be, as you place your elf hat over the bead, then the bangs could be sticking out. But that comes later. Just decide if you want your elf to have hair. Okay, so now you're going to draw the face on your bead, and this is why we want to do the hat before we draw the face, because your hat might be kind of big, depending on how you cut the pattern out. Maybe you cut it closer to the pattern so that you actually cut a little bit of the pattern, or you cut it a little away from the pattern so your hat pattern was a little bit bigger. It's okay. I wanted to show this to you because if your bead is covered mostly by the hat, you can tilt it. You can tilt it comes time to glue. You can tilt it backwards a little bit so more of the face shows. Or you can have it straight on. If you decide that you just want it straight up and down, then one of the tricks that you can do to make your hat smaller is to press it down and then just cut a little bit of the end off. There is a curve to it, so you want to make sure that you follow that curve. Okay, so I'm liking this much better. I wanted my hat to be I want my hat to stand straight up on my elf. So I just cut a little bit of the end off, and I like that much better. Okay, so now I know where my hat's gonna be and where my face needs to be. So now it's time to draw the face. Again, you're going to want to draw your face, do several practices before you commit to drawing on the wooden bead. And how you do this is you're just gonna hold the bead in one hand. I have tons of glue on my finger, sorry about that. Hold the bead in one hand and then use your dominant hand to draw the face. It is a little bit tricky, it is a little bit hard, but I totally believe in you, you can do it. And I've decided that I'm going to give my elf these curved happy eyes and a little C-shaped nose and just a little smile, just a little half smile like that. That's what I've decided to make my elf look like. Very happy. Okay, so now that your face is drawn, I can see that the ink is a little bit wet, so I'm gonna let that dry. I don't wanna smudge it. I don't wanna risk smudging it. So I'm just gonna let that dry for a minute or so before I touch it or glue it to my body, because I want that to be dry. Oh my goodness, so cute. Yeah, you're gonna glue the head. You can actually glue the head to the body and then just let it dry that way. In fact, that's what I recommend. I think we should just let the head face dry on the body, and then we'll come back and glue the hat on our elf, and our elf is almost done. So to glue the head on, you're going to pipe glue into the center of the bead, just like that. You want to get a good amount in there. You don't want to fill the whole bead up. You see that I don't have the glue coming out the other end. I just have piped some glue at the base there. And then I'm going to place the bead over that neck part. I'm going to bend my elf in a sitting position and let that dry. Now that needs to dry for probably 2 to 3 minutes. You want to make sure that that head isn't going to go anywhere and that the face is dry. So we're just going to pause the camera. I'm going to let that head dry to the top of the elf, and then we'll be back to finalize the last process, which is to glue the hat and the hat band on, and then your elf is ready to be a charming character in your decor. Okay, we're back, and I feel like the head's staying glued there. I can see that some of my glue is still wet, and that's okay. It'll dry eventually, but what's great about tacky glue is it stays secure as it's drying. And I've decided that I'm not going to put hair on my elf, but if you decide that you want your elf to have hair, now is the time to put it on. If you want like just little bits of short hair sticking out of your cap, you can glue short pieces to the top of the head at this point. So you'll just put a little glue at the top. You'll place the pieces of yarn on the top of the head. Wait a minute for it to dry and be secure, and then you can glue your hat on. When you're gluing your hat on, you want to make sure the seam is in the back. So as you glue your hat on, you don't want the seam to be in front, because it just doesn't look as nice. You want to have the seam in back, okay? So again, you're just going to pipe glue. When your tube gets empty, it's harder to pipe it, but that's okay. We'll just squeeze it on down. So I'm gonna pipe a little bit of glue around the edge here, all the way around the hat. So you want that hat to stay on. So you're gonna make sure there's glue all the way around the hat. You're gonna make sure the seam is in the back. So once you see that the seam is in the back, just gonna rest the hat on top of your elf head. Let that dry for a minute, and then you can do the last part, which is to glue the band of the hat on, okay? You can glue the band on before you glue it on your elf. It's up to you, the process, if you want to wait until the hat is on to put the band, or if you want to put the band on before you glue the hat on your elf. It's a process that you can decide. I like to put it on after, because the head of the elf gives the hat stability, and it just seemed easier for me. Okay, so now the last element of our elf is to pipe some glue around the base of the hat. If your hands are gluey and sticky, that's one of the reasons why on the instruction list it says to have a wet paper towel on hand. I did not do that, so my hands are a little bit sticky with glue and they look sticky, but if you have a wet paper towel, you can get that extra glue off. The only thing that's a problem is if my glue would be still sticky and I'm touching my elf, then I might get that glue on my elf outfit. So be aware of that. But now it's dry on my hand, so it's not a problem. So now I'm just going to bend my tube so I can get some good piping action. And I'm just going to pipe a little bit at a time. I'm gonna put a little bit there. I'm going to, actually, let's pipe it all the way around because you want the band ends to be in the back, just like the seam of your hat is in the back of your elf. The ends of the trim will be in the back. Okay, so I'm gonna start back here, the beginning of my trim, and I'm just going to place it all along the hat. If you see a little bit of glue that's been dripping down, don't sweat it. It will dry and then you can pick it away. Okay, so I've got this all the way around. There's a little bit of an excess, that's okay. Better to be too long than too short. Okay, and oh my goodness. I am so pleased with how this little elf turned out. Thank you for joining us on Craftshop to Go, Elf for Your Shelf, and I hope you enjoyed this workshop. We'll see you next time.